The whole idea here is to try to get the facts straight. I've talked about when I take people to the Holy Land and when I ever talk about any ideas, mixing texts and archaeology and material evidence, I always try to rate things and try to say, what do we actually know? And even when we say that, what are our suppositions in knowing it? Like I could say, I'm quite sure Jesus was put in a tomb by Joseph of Arimathea, and Bart might say, well, I'm not quite sure of that at all. So whether it can be a fact, we could disagree on facts, but if possible, get to facts. And secondly, if you could agree on a fact, then maybe draw an implication. Like, I'll give you an example. If Jesus was a woodworker or a stone worker, I think a stone worker, and he lived outside of Sepphoris, could we infer that he might have gone to Sepphoris and worked and been familiar with Hellenistic culture? You see, in other words, it's from the fact. If we take it as a fact in Mark that he's a tecton. But then the third level is speculation, where you go, almost I wonder if I could imagine him working there and even being there all the time. You're going further, you see. So that's what we, in some ways, have to do on the Shroud. I made this for Shroud believers mainly, and so I'm accepting the gospel accounts pretty much at face value, which, many would not do. Bart wouldn't, and I don't even in a lot of my work. But I'm trying to pull people in to think critically about the question. So here's the famous image. If you've seen anything, probably seen this. It does have these burn marks, but this is the positive image. So I'm going to say right now, you probably got this in the lecture. It's the main point of the entire lecture. Nobody ever saw anything like this until 1898. So that's very important because one of the objections that I get, I've gotten hundreds of emails, but Dr. Tabor, if it's true that it's a solographic image, that would have been known and people would have had photography 500 years before it was invented. There's no way you could hide something that great. Well, it wasn't that great. Nobody knew it. What did people see? They simply saw that faint image, which we'll get to. So this is a summary. What I first do is talk about what do we know archaeologically about shrouds and about tombs and about Jewish burial. And I'm not going to go over it again, but I tell you about my involvement. And that's actually why I thought, well, I need to talk some about the Shroud of Turin because I've done all this work on Jewish tombs and excavated tombs. And I was fortunate enough in the summer of 2000, and you heard the story in the video to be involved in discovering the only first century CE burial shroud in the Jerusalem area. And therefore we have one and we can at least talk about what we do have. Then the same with crucifixion. What do we know about crucifixion? And what we actually have are these heel bones, and the crucifixion was something like this. And also, I gave you pictures of the hands and the nails. I think I took that slide out because, again, this is a summary. But to make a long story short, forget Jesus here for a minute in the middle. That's supposed to be Jesus. This this guy here is probably representing the best I've ever seen. So the feet would be on the side, heel bones in. Since I have it here. This is a crucifixion nail from Jerusalem. I'll put it up where you can see it close. That was in the video. And it was found at Pilate's judgment seat, and I have it locked up here with artifacts that I'm writing because we're publishing the excavations at Pilate's judgment seat with Dr. Gibson. And as you can see, the weight of the body is held up by ropes, and whether they put a rope around the chest, that would be very smart. Then you're really holding the person up. And the nails are they're two nails. We've got two examples of crucifixion victims, and the nails are in the hand, but they're put through the back of the hand. So the hands are back over like this. Well, actually, something like it could be like that, but I'm just talking about what we found. And they're simply to tack the hand, where you don't start going like this and loosening the ropes, because crucifixion is supposed to last 2 or 3 days. And 2 or 3 days, any rope, you can't make it too tight or you'll cut off circulation like a tourniquet, right? But it has to be tight enough to hold. And that's what the nails are for. This I put in, I have a theory that you can go to jamestabor.com/Golgotha, that Jesus was crucified on the Mount of Olives. I think there's a lot of evidence for that. So this gives you kind of a visual of what it might have looked like that day. But the reason I showed this is it's wrong. Like I had the nails in the, maybe probably in the wrist, I thought at that time, just the way you can see, and I didn't have any ropes. And where is this wrist thing coming from? It's coming from the shroud. There's no evidence of crucifixion in the wrists. Everybody thinks there is. So I went over all that, even John Cook's book, 500 pages that I have behind me here in the bookshelf. So that's archaeology. We know what a burial shroud's like. We know how crucifixions were done. And none of that fits the Shroud of Turin. Now, if you're a defender of the Shroud of Turin, you say, yeah, but they could have had other ways of crucifying and they could have had other kinds of burial shrouds. Okay. Could have, could have, could have. But as far as what we know, I think it's good to start with that. Mark's account, I think, and I think Bart agrees, is the earliest. And I'll just note verse 46. And he, that's Arimathea, Joseph, bought a linen shroud, there's actually a shroud store. It's a funeral. It's like a funeral home. And you get ossuaries, you get shrouds, and you get bags of spices, usually 40, 50 pound bags of spices already mixed. And that's what you do when you bury someone. And he bought a linen shroud. The Greek word is plural here. So sindona is shroud. Sindona means shroud cloth, meaning the head, the body, and you have straps around the body to hold it. So our shroud had all of that. I say our shroud, the one I was fortunate enough to be involved in. Taking him down, you wrap him in the shroud and lay him in a tomb. Luke says nobody had ever been there. That could be true. But the point is, it's not Joseph's tomb. And I made a big point about that. Every single scholar I've ever heard that talks about the burial would say, whether it's true historically or not, that the Gospels report that Joseph put Jesus in his own tomb. One word. It's all depending on one word. There it is. Some of you know Greek, right? The genitive of autos, his. Take the word his out and laid it in a new tomb. A new tomb, nobody had ever been there. So why is Matthew adding this? I think it's for apologetic reasons. You guys are part of BSA. You know how things accrue as you keep rewriting. And he wants to fulfill Isaiah 53. He's a rich man, so if he puts him in a tomb, it's got to be his tomb. But, really, what are the chances? Joseph's rich. He has an estate south of Jerusalem in Arimathea. It's on Condor's map. You saw that in the video. And it's near what we call today Talpiot. Nothing, you don't have to go at the Talpiot tomb, but that is where the estate was. And the other thing is if you take him down from the cross and wrap him up in a shroud like this, which we've never heard of, 14 feet, 3 feet wide, it is going to be the biggest bloody mess. Let's just be honest. Blood's going to be pouring out. It has, whether it's even starting to clot, spear wound, all that beating would just shred the body like you don't want to think about it. It's a horrible thing to think about, right? The flogging and everything. So, of course, these are just medieval images, but the shroud image is almost that clean. It's got the stripes and it's got the side mark because the person who made it put those in. It's actual blood. He used blood, whether, I don't know what kind of blood. But here's what I want you to notice that I talk about all the time and nobody ever listens to me. Please listen to me. That John says, if you've heard Goodacre lately, Goodacre says John is a fourth synoptic gospel, and I agree with him. John is overriding Mark, especially on the Passion narrative. And Mark implies that it was a temporary tomb because they took him down and laid him in a tomb where nobody had been laid. Like, what are we going to do with this body over Passover and the Sabbath? But John actually tells you, in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb where no one had ever been laid. So he's supplementing Mark's account. So because of the Jewish day of preparation, and he also uses a different Greek word because he wants you to know it's not just a shroud or even shrouds, but it's linen cloths. I wore a linen shirt, by the way, Megan, just to impress you guys. This is a beautiful linen shirt that I decided to wear today. So it's linen. So, because of the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was close at hand, nobody reads that. It tells you why they picked this tomb. And so you heard that. And I believe this, I'm convinced this. Pull this out. You know how to pull out a pericope, right? Just here's your text. Pull this out and don't read the things before it. Well, you can read before it because that's the breath. Don't read anything after. And you know what? I think this is the earliest account of the discovery of an empty tomb. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I think it's the earliest. And it just follows from the previous verses. If you stash his body to protect it from predators, over the Jewish holiday and the Sabbath, Passover, what do you do early Sunday morning? I mean, really early, maybe even, I would say they came Saturday night with torches and they took the body and permanently buried it. And I don't agree that they left it on the cross or it rotted. And, Bart and Craig Evans have gone back and forth on that and so forth. I think he was buried. Paul, as the earliest account, he says Jesus died and was buried. He uses the word buried. So I go with our earliest account. Jesus was buried. And so where and how and so forth, here we have the discovery. But the discovery is not faith in resurrection. I hope you all got that if you watched the video. The discovery is they've already moved him. They got here before us. But this is Mary Magdalene. Notice she comes at dark, according to John. So John is he's not good with Mark's account. Yes, it breaks off and it doesn't have the appearances. That's fine. I'm talking about just this pericope. But, and she goes and tells Simon, Peter, and I believe it's James, but most people think it's John, the son of Zebedee. I have no idea why, because that just makes no sense if you realize that he received the care of Jesus' mother since he's the next born son. But anyway, we don't have to get into that today. And you've got the two claws, and he's gone. And when the disciples finally get there, Peter and the other one, he saw and believed. And every shroud person, I'd call it shroud person, like they think this is the burial cloth of Jesus. And it also proves the resurrection. They all say, oh, they believe because they saw the shroud. They saw that image on the shroud, and they go, wow, he must have been resurrected because how could that image get there? No, they're not doing modern shroud studies. He saw and believed, but they didn't know the scripture that he would rise from the dead. So what did they believe? They believed that he's gone. Remember, even Luke says when it was first reported, they said, idle tale, women, let's go check the tomb. Somehow they missed something. And I think they went back to the Galilee. They went back to their homes. Gospel of Peter said, we wept and mourned 7 days. I gave a lecture on this to this group recently after Easter. So there's the conclusion there. No Joseph Arimathea, original count, and the clothes left behind. So then the shroud, let's look at this image. It's not that impressive. It's ethereal. People, I mean, you would not have seen this. I took the marks off, the burn marks, the water stains, the poker marks. I didn't take this is not I would have taken these off too. This is blood. So all I left is the scorched kind of image. It's like if I scorched my shirt, that's why I wore this. I put a very hot iron on linen. Maybe you've ironed linen before. You can use high heat, but if you leave it, it will do a scorch. That's how the shroud was made, but it wasn't heat radiation, it was light radiation. That's the difference. You can burn your skin with a hot poker, or you can burn it out in the sun. And we all know what that feels like. And it's the same thing, really. Your skin will bubble up in the sun and it'll bubble up in the under heat. So this is all people would see. I say it's not that impressive. What I mean is they're not seeing that black and white image. Woo, the face of Jesus. How could we know that? Now, the face is kind of interesting. You can see there but you can't really see many features. Even if you zoomed in, it kind of disappears when you zoom in. But it could represent this is the shroud that covered Jesus, and they would probably think, you had these blood blotches, and it made kind of a print, maybe from the vapors or whatever. I don't think they were trying to explain it scientifically. Then I went over what do we know about the shroud, and this is what we know, and this is all we know. I know you're going to hear that it had a big trail and it went everywhere. It started in Jerusalem and then it went to Edessa. Then it went to Constantinople and then it was finally moved to France. No evidence of that whatsoever. I know everybody says there is, but there isn't. There really isn't. I mean, there are mentions of things, but remember, there are dozens of shrouds. There are dozens of, we know of three face cloths, and I just don't think it holds up. I want to mention Ian Wilson's book. That's the first book I read in the 70s. I was pretty blown away by it. I'm being honest here. I was a good Christian boy. Went to Pepperdine. I was kind of like Bart was when he tells about his biography. I was raised pretty much fundamentalist believer. And I read Wilson's book, and I was just thrilled by it. I thought this is even proof. Orlando, look it up on Amazon. Robert Orlando, the filmmaker, Mark Goodacre's in it, Dale Allison's in it, but it's a really bad film. I told Robert, I told Bob, I call him Bob, Rob. I told him, I said, I watched your film. I'm so disappointed. And I guess he didn't like that. But he said, well, why don't we have a screening in Charlotte and we can discuss it? It's like, probably not. But anyway, he's a good guy. He's sincere. He believes that this is the burial cloth of Jesus. So this is the trail that you usually see. These are the different face cloths that are said to be, well, maybe these were the shroud. This is the one that most people talk about the most. It's in Spain. Now, I did give you this colorized image where it helps to see where the blood marks might have been, and how they were put on. And Alan argues that they're put on very systematically. This is not how it would look. There are people that beat themselves, flagellation, it's called, in the Philippines, particularly on Easter. And we know what backs look like when they've been flagellated. Muslims do this too, the Shia. Remember the Shia Muslims? You don't want to look at the videos. Frankly, I'll be honest with you here. This is an adult group. It looks like a piece of shredded hamburger meat when you're done. It's not skin with little marks like that. Those whips just tear the heck out of everything. And you don't even want to think about it. It's hard for me to talk about this because I don't want to think of anybody treated that way, much less Jesus, to whom I've devoted, 45 years of my life to studying and deeply admire. So here's the big reveal. I'm almost done here. 1898, suddenly, look what happens. You go from this, and that's a really clear image taken with different exposures that was taken by Secundo Pio. Nobody ever even saw that much. That is clear. You take that, a photo, that's a photo of the shroud, develop it as a positive, and all of a sudden, you're blown away, right? You're blown away. Am I looking in the face of the historical Jesus of Nazareth and all the suffering? Okay. And the mystery then, how could it be made? How could it be made? And why is that a mystery? Because that image, you don't see this. Remember, I'm going to keep saying that because everybody says, this thing about photography. This is what you see. I didn't see the clarity of Pio's image. So here are some of the problems I went over. I won't read them all, but I mentioned some of them. Nails in the wrists, no evidence of that. Nails through the front of the feet, no evidence of that. Shrouds are not sandwiched. I think the long hair is a big problem. Jesus could not, I don't think he had long hair. He's not under a Nazir vow. There's no reason for him to have long hair. And I think that's witnessed by even Paul, talking to his converts, he doesn't want men. You cannot have long hair. We don't do that in Judaism. You know. Now, how was it produced? However, it was produced, and I'm not even calling it a forgery. Look, I don't know the motives of the person who made it. They might have been very sincere and devotional, and maybe they never claimed it was the body of Jesus. Maybe they figured out that if you take a body, a cadaver, and make an ultraviolet image using the sun and then paint the wounds on, you turn it into a figure like Jesus, but it has to meet all of these criteria. If you're gonna, because everybody says no one can reproduce the shroud. The only thing that could do it are these billions of units of ultraviolet light or energy, like it just burst and it kind of magically printed on the linen. And Alan's technique that you've watched meets all 10 of those criteria, all 10. And this is the simple way it's done. I made a pinhole camera in grade school. Maybe you did too. It's kind of fun to do. Your eye does this. When I'm looking at you now, in my back of my eye, it's flipping you over. And then my eye optical nerves are correcting all that so that I am seeing it so I don't like think your head is on the floor when I meet you, right? So our eyes work that way. A guy wrote me today. He lists 10 objections to my video. All 10 were wrong. They could not have had an optical crystal at that time. Well, here's some pretty nice crystal, and it's from 1200. And people had eyeglasses. Did you know that? And Alan shows all that in his larger video. And here's the image he got. And now remember, this is not enhanced. This is not taken to make. That's kind of what the shroud would look like if you could see it, like from 6 feet away in Turin, and they brought it down right in front of you. So a lot of times people say, "Oh, but the image we have is much sharper." Well, that's because Pio, he says, I took multiple exposures and multiple light. They didn't have filters, but in terms of not doctoring it, just looking at the linen, you get this. Well, that's not so impressive, is it? And neither is the shroud. But if you develop it, look what you get. Plop! That is a huge discovery. And it does seem miraculous. How could I go from this to this? Now, you know what one of the objections is? Well, that doesn't look like Jesus. It's a bust, okay? I don't know how much. What if he had modeled it exactly like the Shroud guy with the bruised nose, everything? Then it would look more like him, but we're not talking about whether it's exact, we're talking about the process. And here's the process. Probably a cadaver. I don't think a statue would work. It makes the edges too bright, and but he's not going to use a body, obviously. I don't think he mutilated. I don't think they mutilated the body. I just think they took a corpse and they did front and back over a period of days, hands modestly tied by the thumbs to protect the private parts. Here's the dark room. Camera obscura is nothing mysterious. It means room, dark. Camera room, obscura, dark. Dark room. There it is. Is this photography? No. Very important. It is not photography. Photography is totally different. But is it using light? Yes. And there's his full image. Here's his guy he started with, obviously a plaster cast. And here's what he got. And here's the image on the shroud. Here's the positive. Here's the image Alan got. Here's the positive. And back to this. These are the critiques. I'm not going to go over them again, but all of these are invalid. These are the very critiques somebody wrote me today. You've been studying this for 30 years. You're missing the point. Here are the critiques. There's no silver. It fails the VP8 test. The blood is under the image and so forth. All wrong. All wrong. So now I got to write him back the email. Did you watch the video? Because I went over this already. And then you got all of these other claims. And I'd already gone 2 hours, and I was going to go over these, and I thought, nobody's going to watch even 2 hours. I would have to go 4 hours. And then I thought, Hugh Ferry, thank you. He's such a delightful guy. And I put these links in. These are easy links. It goes to let's see, his name is Jake Brock, I think. It goes to his YouTube. But Hugh Ferry went over every one of these in great detail, and he doesn't even agree with Alan. So to me, that's good. But I love his personality. He's such a delightful Englishman. He lives in the UK. And he has a whiteboard behind him, and he says, "Okay, this and this," and he goes over all this stuff. So he covers all of these things if you do want to hear more about the objections. So these are all links. You can go back and get a screenshot of this or whatever if you want to do a screenshot right now. These are all shortened links, but this is a video on finding the tomb. This is a video on my theory about resurrection, the text. This is the Shroud tomb. This is crucifixion. So you get to see real video of us discovering it. And this is Alan's full presentation, and you get he does art history, he does everything, and this is Ferry's thing. So